a student that needs it recorded. Hello.
Hello.
So again, today's lecture is being recorded. A couple things I want to introduce you to
Whoa.
Mrs. Willendorf. Just gives you a sense about how actual big she is. This is the reason I'm not allowed back into the country of Austria. That's a joke. This is a reproduction. It's not the real thing. Look, where's the... There we go. Ah. So I'll go ahead and I'll pass this around. Don't drop her, please. Okay, so do a little review and then a little bit of finishing out Paleolithic. So these bison, what's the media? Yeah, very good.
Fired.
Not fired.
I'm not putting it on our car.
This is lovely. What kind of sculpture is this?
Really?
Yeah, it is relief sculpture. Okay, so on your card, I want you to write down how big you think these are, like how long they are.
How long?
How long? Like from here to there. Worthy. Razor. Come on, my tried and true pointer thingy. When everything else has failed me in my life, you've always been constant. Alright, anybody wanna guess? 2 feet 4 inches? That's a little bit big.
2 feet flat.
Very close.
That's what
They're 25 inches long. So like you see the tiles in the floor, each tile is 12 inches. So like 2 of those plus a little bit is how wide they are. Pretty good size, actually. About the size of a standard bike tire. If any of you ride bikes, that's about how big they are. Okay. Apparently my pointer or things not working. So we're gonna go back to spear throwers just really quickly. I'm gonna show you 3 different spear throwers, maybe 4 different spear throwers. So this one around 18,000 BC, again, the Dordogne region of France, where they seem to kind of do a little bit more naturalistic depictions of things. Remember, the Rock of Sorcier is from the Dordogne region of France as well. You can't see the date. But I like this one because, again, you have a bison that's like licking its back, which I think is just kind of a fun little thing. It's made out of deer antler from France around 18,000 BC. All right, so this is the actual thing that they have, and this is a reconstruction that I showed you earlier. So this is the creeping hyena spear thrower. And so this was in pieces, mammoth ivory. Anybody know the difference between ivory and bone? Yes,
Ivory is like external, right? And bone is inside.
sort of. You're close.
Okay.
Or ivory specifically teeth.
Yeah, ivory is teeth. It has enamel on it. So when you're talking about ivory, you're talking about teeth. So those big things that come out of elephants' tusks, those are teeth. You know the horn of a narwhal? It's actually a tooth. Not an actual horn. It's a tooth. Okay, so this is the original that's been pieced back together. Somewhere 17,000 to 12,000 BC. So we're getting from, once we get to around 15,000 BC to 10,000 BC, you're kind of in what's known as the Mesolithic range, okay? We're not going to worry about that. That's just for your own personal edification. So it's France, but we're going to classify it as Paleolithic. So I've gone over that one before. All right, so these are the embracing deer. Actually, no, I think those are goats. Those are goats. So this was also made out of antler. And you can see in the antler, or which part of the antler it would have come from as well. And here's how they would have used it. So again, we are viewing it like this for the art, but they would have used it, this would have been on the top, because that's where the dart would have hooked into. And the final one is my faves. This is a spear thrower with 3 different aged horses, made out of reindeer horn. Again, around 15,000 BC in France. What's really cool about this, it has the 3 horses and 3 ages. So you have a juvenile horse here. Then you have a mature horse here. And then you have a dead horse. So what I think is really cool is that they've actually on the dead horse, they've actually stripped away the skin. You can actually see the musculature and the kind of bone structure underneath it. And I think the reason why I like this one so much is for the fact that it actually is saying something, right? So you have youth, maturity, and death. Youth, maturity, death. Same cycle that humans go through as well. Same cycle that they'd be able to observe in the world around them and kind of wonder about, right? You guys are young, you don't think about all these stages right now. You're thinking about life is ahead of me. Well, I'm 51, right? So I'm closer to that than I am to a lot of you guys. So it's saying more than just I like horses, right? It's actually exploring the cycle of life from youth into maturity and then ultimately death and decay. So again, not knuckle-dragging thugs, but they're actually thoughtful human beings, just like you and me. All right, so with that, we're going to end the Paleolithic period. Yes, I do want you to come. And we are going to go into Neolithic. Woo! Now again, all these dates are approximate because the Neolithic starts in different areas at different times based off of different factors. So I will give you the 3 factors that kind of make something Neolithic. By the way, neo means new, lithic means stonish, right? Again, from the Greek. So we will go from the Old Stone Age through the Middle Stone Age into the New Stone Age. It's called the Stone Age because they haven't developed metallurgy yet. They're still using stone tools. So, what makes Neo different from Paleo? Now, to determine when Neolithic age starts in a particular area, it requires 3 criteria. First of all, there has to be evidence of domesticated animals. It's widely believed that the first domesticated animal was the dogi, somewhere around 11,000 BC. Other things like cattle, goats, etc. were domesticated at later times. So you have domesticated animals. Another criteria for determining whether a society is Neolithic is are they cultivating plants in some way? They're not just hunting for animals and gathering edible plants, but they're actually planting edible plants as agriculture. So the first plants that they believe humans cultivated were grasses in order to make grains. So things like barley, wheat, things like that. And the third criteria is they have settled year-round communities. So they had sedentary communities. So those are the 3 criteria. Can you dig it?
Yeah.
All right, good. And I will say that this was the criteria established for over 100 years. And when we get into the ancient Near East, we're going to come up with a place that's going to blow all this crap out of the water. All right? But it's still, in general, a rule. It's just, the difference is that this is how they thought societies developed along this lines. And we're going to talk about a place that totally blows that out of the water. Okay? Yeah.
So does this imply that people weren't harvesting plants or cultivating until
Yes.
this period?
Beforehand.
Okay.
Yeah, they would know what edible plants were, but they weren't like grabbing their seeds and planting them in the ground.
What about Cain and Abel?
Huh?
What about Cain and Abel?
What about Cain and Abel?
One of them was a farmer,
Yeah.
so would he have to be in Neolithic?
Huh? Well, that's a very good question. Also determines whether you read the Bible literally or metaphorically. I think both can work. But again, those are matters of faith, right? We can talk about timelines, and so if you can put Cain and Abel along these timelines, you're talking Neolithic. But still, Neolithic is a very long time ago, right? So I don't have a problem with that working. It's just that it becomes more problematic when you have evidence of Homo sapiens, which is like you and I, going back 250,000 years. You know, and then you have the Bible talking about Cain and Abel. One was a herdsman, another one was a farmer, right? So there's different ways to rectify that, but this isn't a theology class. This is a art history class. But that's a great question for the BTS department. Okay, so 3 criteria for Neolithic. You have domesticated animals, cultivated plants, and settled year-round communities. associated developments of Neolithic culture. When you start having bigger communities settle together, different things start happening. So, one of the things is that we have about 100 Paleolithic grave sites that have what you would call like hunting artifacts from them, right? So out of those 100 that have like, so they have like flint shards that you can make arrowheads and spearheads and stuff out of, right? So like if you were a hunter, you would have this, so if you broke a point, you can make another point and refit whatever it was that you were using. So let's say we found like 100 of those burial sites that have, from the Paleolithic times, that have obvious grave goods that were like, this is a hunter person. Let's say that and then we have like 30 of those that we can actually get DNA from, that we can determine some genetic things from them. Out of those 30 that they've done genetic testing from, 40% of them were women. So this is Paleolithic. So the idea is that everybody did everything in Paleolithic times. You know, the women hunted when they weren't actively taking care of children. Everybody was gathering berries and edible plants and stuff like that. So when we get to Neolithic times, what we start seeing is specialized divisions of things. So we see people who are specifically farmers, people who are specifically warriors, people who are specifically hunters, people who are the leaders, priests, etc. So this kind of division of labor starts happening within Neolithic time periods. And we also start to see more developed ceremonial practices. Now this is again what is going to be kind of thrown on its head, because we only thought that religion or like very organized religion and stuff like that only happened during Neolithic times. But I'm going to show you that it actually happened way earlier than Neolithic times. And that was a paradigm that happened in the 1990s that basically threw this whole model on its head a little bit. I mean, it still applies, but it's not the only model of human development. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Like we did with the Paleolithic, we'll start off with Neolithic painting. This is a painting from Janet, Algeria, somewhere between 9,000 and 5,000 BC.
You said it's from
Algeria,
Algeria.
yeah. Okay, so on your card, I want you to write down a couple things about what you see here. All right, name one thing that we see.
Bow and arrow.
Bow and arrow. Good. Good observation. What else?
Looks like a deer.
Not a deer.
Hunting dog?
A doge. It's a doge. And what else do we see?
Is the guy in 3/4 perspective? Or no?
Is it a guy?
Is it a deer or is
It's probably a guy. It's hard to tell the perspective because it's silhouetted. All right. Next one, Roca del Moros. Spain. So notice the time difference, 4,000 to 2,000 BC. And we still consider this to be Neolithic, right?
Could you go back a second? Sorry. Thank you.
Okay, so what we have here is a group of people, right? People. I don't know, baby? People. Not people. Here. Okay, so this is often interpreted as these are women. Women. And you gotta kind of work for it a little bit, but this is interpreted as a dance that's going on. It's kind of hard to make out every little detail, but like the triangular heads are considered to be women. This might be a dude. I'll let you try and figure out why it might be a dude. But a lot of people interpret this as some sort of ceremonial type of a dance. Yes, sir.
Why do you think some are like silhouettes and some are?
I don't know. I think it probably has to do, I honestly think it probably has to do with whatever it is that they happen to be wearing, you know. Like maybe this is more of a solid fiber, but this might be more like grass or something like that. It's hard to tell without being in that ceremony, but yeah, it is interesting that they tend to give at least a couple figures a slight uniqueness to them, right?
They're like subjects.
Or maybe those figures are to represent specific people who have specific roles in that community. You know, that's the thing, we just don't know. Like these could be like the hoi polloi or the common people, and like maybe these three people, because they're more central, one of them's a male, you know, maybe they have different roles within that society. Some people interpret this guy as like a witch doctor or something, you know. Again,
Person in between.
yeah, this is like another figure here, I think, because I don't know what else it could be.
Is this one of the first ones with like clothes depicted, or?
Yeah.
I don't know enough to actually say that. To me, Neolithic painting isn't as cool as Paleolithic painting, so I don't spend a whole lot of time on it or doing a whole lot of research on it. I just found like some of the like more important Neolithic paintings, and this is one of them. The next one's my faves. Oh, not that one. This is also part of it, it's just in a different part of the wall. Still, they're doing animals better than people, right? That's still a kind of a common theme in Neolithic. They do animals better than people. All right, Orania Cave, also in Spain from around 8,000 BC. Don't forget the Nia. How's it going? Okay. Here it is. You're like, I don't see what's you see, Dr. Cummings. Okay, so here's the thing, here's the thing, here's the thing, here's the thing.
Spiders?
Thing. Here's the thing. And here's a person. Alright, this is what it's depicting. Anybody want to guess? Actually, write down on your card what you think is actually depicting. See if anybody can figure it out. Okay, who wants to guess what's going on? Yes.
Is it someone taking honey from a beehive?
Yes!
Yay!
That makes sense.
Yeah, so they're
Crazy.
climbing a tree and they're sticking their arm in to get honey from the hive, and they have a bucket to put the honey in. So, like, if this were a Disney cartoon, this would be Pooh Bear. And these are the bees that are not happy about what is happening. So it makes me wonder, like, did this person draw the short straw? Like, go get honey. Or did they have some sort of means of, like, protecting themselves from being stung, you know, in this particular way, shape, or form? But I don't know. What I think is really cool is that they're using, like, the natural hole in the rock as kind of the place for the honey tree, or where the bees are, right? I don't know, I just think it's cool. But again, the fact that they're depicting something like this, it's like, why did they choose this and to, you know, memorialize on the stone, on the kind of rock wall? Most of these are more rock shelters than they are caves. So a rock shelter is just like, you know, you have access to a rocky, flat rocky surface, like maybe a few feet up on a wall. Okay, so let's talk about the differences between the Neolithic themes in the paintings that we saw compared to the Paleolithic, right? So, what do you guys think? What were the differences?
There were a lot more people.
A lot more peepholes. Yes. Yes.
I think Paleolithic paintings have more depth when it comes to animals.
Yes. I would agree with that. You notice a shift to more of a silhouetting of things. If there's any like value differences, they're very minimal. So it's more important to kind of get the silhouette of the thing down than it is to kind of get the form of the thing down. Yes.
I feel like the Neolithic has more storytelling.
Yes, very good. There's more action going on in the Neolithic, or at least specific action. People dancing, someone getting honey, somebody on a hunt with a dog, right? There's more kind of narrative detail in Neolithic paintings. So you have a lot more people. The people are doing things, more narrative details, right? And they tend to be more silhouetted instead of artistically detailed. They're more narratively detailed, but less artistically detailed. More stories going on, but less cool artwork, if you ask me. All right, good job. Way to be analytical, people. All right, let's talk about Neolithic architecture. We're going to talk about two main forms of Neolithic architecture, okay? Neolithic architecture manifested in two main forms. The first is post and lintel. That's lintel, not lentil. Make sure the I and the E are in the right place. Because one of them is the crossbar on two posts, and the other one is like a beam. So it's post and lintel, not post and lentil. And the second one, even though I spelled it wrong, is corbelling. There should be 2 L's. It's funny because corbelling you can actually use as a verb, but you can't really use post and linteling. Does that make sense? Because corbelling is actually a repeatable process, whereas a post and lintel is a finished form. So if you've been corbelling and made architecture, you've made corbelled architecture. I corbelled that architecture. All right, let's talk about post and lintel first. Alright, now post and lintel architecture is probably like the most basic architecture that there was developed, right? Post and lintel architecture always has 2 posts, 1 lintel. Okay? If it doesn't have 2 posts and 1 lintel, it's not post and lintel. Post and lintel architecture and post and lintel forms are used all the time. They're still used today. Walk through any doorway and you're essentially going through post and lintel architecture. And you're looking at these doors, you're going, oh, they're made of welded steel, Dr. Cummings. Well, you're right. I said most any doorway. The doorways in your house are made with post and lintel architecture. Isn't that cool? I thought so. Okay, so post and lintel, 2 posts, 1 lintel. Anybody know what the most famous form of post and lintel architecture is? Stonehenge. Yeah, we're gonna talk about that. All right, so the space in between the supported thing is called the span. So you have the supported thing right there, then you have these posts. And whenever you have like the actual supports, that space in between is called the span. So the span of a bridge is the distance of the bridge between any 2 supporting elements. Okay. So the span is the space between that which is supported. And it doesn't just apply to post and lintel architecture, it applies to all architecture that is supporting something. That empty space is what's known as the span. Okay? Alright, this is an example of post and lintel architecture from Hagar Kim on the island of Malta, which is in the Mediterranean Sea, from around 3600 to 3200 BC. And I include it because most of you don't know that there's Neolithic stuff on Malta. Most of you might have, you've at least heard of the island of Malta, right? Okay. But most people don't realize that it had this really flourishing Neolithic culture on it that kind of disappeared. But it's got some really great architecture left. So here you have post and lintel here. These are the posts, right? There's your lintel. I like how they like pecked away at the stone and made these holes in it. It looks visually interesting. Lintel, posts. 2 posts, 1 lintel. All right, Stonehenge. Notice the long length here, not because they don't know it was built, it's just it was built for about 2,000 years in various stages. So, lintel, posts, 2 posts, 1 lintel. But you're saying, Dr. Cumming, they're cheating. They're putting 2 lintels on a post. You're right, they are. But with every lintel, you have 2 posts, right? That lintel, 2 posts. This lintel, even though it's sharing with that one, 2 posts. 2 posts, 1 lintel. post and lintel construction. Alright, corbelling. Corbelling and post and lintel more than likely developed around the same time. Corbelling requires a little bit more care to avoid death. So corbelling is based on a more primary architectural principle, which is called the cantilever. You can remember it by saying, can't I lever? Or you could do the cantilever. However you need to learn it. Okay. Alright. Have you ever stood on something cantilevered before? Yes? If you know what that is, write down on your card what you feel like you stood on. That was cantilevered. Especially since I haven't even explained to you what cantilever is yet. Anybody? Anybody? Yeah?
Diving board.
A diving board. If you've ever stood on a diving board and dived into the wawa, you have been on a cantilevered thing. So a cantilever has a span that is only supported by one side. Okay? Did you know that the Flintstones had a diving board too? This is a naturally cantilevered rock that you can actually go and stand on yourself if you dare. Notice they're not going right to the edge. I'm sure somebody has. It should hold. Person. Should. But it'd still be very scary. Yeah, but that's cantilevered. So this span right here is supported in one area right here. Okay, so on its basic level, this is a cantilever. It's something that is overlapped on something else. And with corbelling, you just put a bunch of cantilevers together. So here's the cantilever I just showed you, which is a cantilever on top of supporting stones, and then it has another cantilevered rock over here, and then it has what's known as a capstone, and that holds everything together, and this is called a cantilevered arch. Now an arch is something small that you walk through, like a doorway, right? So if this cantilevered arch went back in space, so if like I was standing in the arch right here, but then all of a sudden I could make it go all the way to the end of the wall, and I walk through it, that would be called a vault. If it's like a gateway that you just walk through, it's called an arch. If it's extended in space that you continually walk through it, it's called a vault. And we'll go over various things that have corbelled architecture. Alright, so these are different types of corbelling. This is probably the most basic type right here with the basic rectangular block cantilever. The edges of these stones have been shaped to make it more of an arch type of a shape, but it's still cantilevering. And that's Flat Stanley right there. Any of you have Flat Stanley growing up? Yeah. All right. This is a Neolithic dolmen at La Pouget in France. And this demonstrates the cantilevered vault. And even though this is very big, it's still just a keystone supporting the entire thing.
Like that thing up there. So big.
Well, it was probably buried in earth, and they just kind of like ramped it up, set it on top. But that is corbelling. Every rock is slightly overlapped with the previous rock. You have a question?
We named it Keystone, right? That's the name we gave it. The Keystone.
We call it keystone.
Yeah.
Yes, that is the English term for that. All right, here's corbelling used in the worst Indiana Jones movie. Partially because it was just a stupid script. Secondary because it had Shia LaBeouf in it, who I really can't stand. As an actor. He did do the peanut butter thing or whatever it was called, and that was a good movie. Is that what it's called? Peanut butter? Something. Yeah. But anyway, that's a corbelled archway right there. Probably made out of styrofoam. Okay, we're going to start into megalith. Mega means large. We all know what lithos means. Stone. And since we haven't transitioned to Latin yet, this is probably Greek also, right? Megalith, megalithos, megastone, large rocks. So, Neolithic culture is known almost primarily through its megalithic architecture and megalithic stones. Alright, megaliths are sort of kind of what the Neolithic period is known for. There's 4 megalithic terms that I want you to know. The first is a menhir. So basically, a menhir and a megalith are essentially synonymous. They mean the same thing. Menhir, megalith, same thing. Okay? If there's any kind of difference or subtle difference of meaning between menhir and megalith, is that menhir usually refers to a single standing stone. Alright? Now the second one is an alignment. An alignment is a relationship of stones that go in a certain direction. Or they're aligned. And this is difficult stuff here. Alright, we have a dolmen. Now a dolmen is kind of a simple megalithic tomb that usually only has one chamber. It could have maybe a couple chambers, but it basically has just a very few number of chambers, probably no more than 3. Now the most confusing thing, that one that is most misunderstood, is what is called a henge. Now you know the term Stonehenge. Stonehenge is not the only henge that's out there, okay? In fact, a henge really has nothing to do with stones at all. A henge is actually a ditch. So Stonehenge has the stone circle that you're all familiar with, but the henge part of it is outside of it and has a ditch that is dug, and the dirt is placed on one side of the ditch to kind of make one side of the ditch higher than the flatland around it. Now, that dirt can be on either on the inside or the outside and still be considered a henge, all right? But that is what a henge is. A henge is just a ditch with the dirt piled up on either the inner side or the outer side of the ditch. Yes? The menhir and megalith are synonymous, but a menhir usually refers to a single standing stone. But they essentially mean the same thing. If I were in France, I would be talking about, and I was teaching you, I would be talking about menhirs, right? Because that's the term that they use most. And when you're talking about French megaliths, you're generally talking about menhirs, because that's just the local terminology. Okay? All right. We will end with that, ladies and gentlemen. Have a happy Wednesday. Bring up your cards. I have to check, but we might be taking a Paleolithic quiz online here in the next get-go. All right. In the next get-go. Somewhere between now and Monday-ish.
Between now and Monday.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, your head's
Because it's an online quiz.
She gone.
Oh, word. Gotcha.
She was right here. What's your name? Oh,
You got a card for you?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
hey, your pencil.
Alright. Here, this one.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I only have like 4 more.
You got a card out?
You do.
I was up to like 2 something.
You'll start seeing carving.
I'm gonna set up my whole thing.
Start having. Not naturalistic.
By noon.
But
Second now. Yeah, I haven't